One of the things I really want to make a distinction between, which I think is extremely important, is knowing the difference between doing our best and being at our best. And I don't think we all know what that really truly means. But given particularly what's going on in the world today, I think it's critically important that we understand what it means to be at our best. You know, we are a very unique species. One of our greatest strengths and our worst weaknesses as a species is in our uniqueness. We need each other. So do ants. So do most packs of animals and need each other. But we take it a few steps beyond that. We have sentimental feelings for each other. We don't have sex just to procreate. We actually have a need and a desire to love. It's like food and water. It's innate in our being. It's innate into the makeup of what we actually truly are. And that goes for everyone. It's a really important point I want to make. We also share that with whales and orcas and dolphins and elephants, that when they lose their young, they grieve, they care beyond just having to survive. And that drive for love is actually what has allowed us to evolve as a species, because we start forming societies where we consider others. We have rules. We consider others in our pack or our tribe, not just because we have to, but because we want to, which has allowed us to evolve in terms of our cognitive ability and our organizational ability and our social ability. That's taken us into the evolutionary stratosphere, really, relative to, most living species. But it's also the problem. It's also the problem because in that seeking of needing and wanting love, we also run into pain and suffering and hurt. In our families of origin, we never grew up in perfect families. And yet we come into this world with this innate need to love. And that goes for all those right-wing, radicalized, white terrorist minds. They came into this world with that as well, and actually are still carrying it. But the way they're going about thinking, they're going to have some kind of new order or connection, is absolutely bizarre. So don't get me wrong. I am certainly not condoning any of that mindset or the behaviors. But anyone that defaults into this kind of strategic, defended mindset underneath it has this desire for the same kind of solution that people that are open and compassionate and obviously caring. It's driven from the same place. And it's really sad how it ends up being covered up with strategy and defense and militant ways. So we all want to belong to some sense of community. And we even think about what's going on in America right now. If you really, and if you're actually trained in psychology beyond viewing things from a socioeconomic perspective or even cultural, that when you unpack it, all those people that really drive me nuts The ones that on the surface, I'd have a hard one. As soon as I talk to somebody when I travel in the States and they say they're a Trump supporter, I have to really recalibrate. What are we going to talk about now? What does this mean about this person beyond just that? It probably means a whole lot of things that these are almost deal breakers. But these people, if you really unpack it, the rhetoric and the campaign that's being pontificated by this ultra-conservative right is actually saying your sense of family is being threatened by people that do not look like you. They're driven to protect what they think is where they can love. And if we want to sort out this current situation, we have to begin to understand that what's driving them is the same thing that's driving you. If we just hold a doing our best, fighting stance, we may be just putting out fire with gasoline. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I'm getting excited. So it's not just about politics, it's about you and I and the way we live. So as I said, this is the thing I ran into once when I was studying psychology years ago. That I was reading this article on this mastermind, criminal mind that was in solitary confinement. And this guy was considered to be of a sociopathic mindset. And when I was reading, I was surprised to read that in solitary confinement, even if you were allegedly a sociopath, after 3 or 4 days of not having human contact, you start entering psychosis. That even a sociopath will suffer from not having contact because it's still ingrained. This is really important to remember, because if we're going to start dealing with the solutions to what we're talking about here, we have to realize that we are all driven by relational psychology. So, as I mentioned, this is the good news and the bad news that we need and we want to love, because either we are able to accomplish that, or we have bad experience, we end up backing up into needing control. We have feelings that we haven't processed, so we don't want to feel them, so we cut them off. We don't want people to be important again. We start replacing loving, honest actions and communication with strategy, mask, and defense. We don't want to be seen. And so we pull back and retreat into this comfort zone that could be triggered very, very easily. We think that if we can control and strategize and defend, we will prevent possible loss, pain. Our world gets smaller and smaller and smaller because, sadly, this is the last thing that's going to happen, is the end game. If I can only control everything, and if I can stay away from painful situations, and if I can stop feeling, that eventually I will have what I want. And we don't, of course. So the result is kind of like a Groundhog Day that we start reliving over and over again, because there's no new information once we retreat to this comfort zone. But even in our comfort zone, we're still hoping and wishing. We think it's going to work. Just to back it up again a little bit, if you're kind of wondering, is that true what he just said? That all of us, aren't there people just kind of bad and evil? If those people didn't still need, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't care. They would just retreat and not even be involved with anybody or anything. What does Donald Trump really want? What does he really want? Take a look at that guy's childhood and you'll start to get some answers. He's still looking for his dad's approval that he never got. And the only time he ever got any kind of approval is when he exhibited a killer mentality. It's the only time. He's still looking for it. How much of a killer mentality do you have to have before you're going to actually allow it to infiltrate this comfort zone and get to the part of him that thinks that he was not worthy of his dad's love. So in this comfort zone, we can't be in love and control at the same time, but we think we can. We really do, especially in the Western world. If only I was just in a little bit more total control, then that's when I'll be able to get love. And it's absolutely self-defeating. It's absolutely impossible to be in love and to be in control at the same time, because if you really think about it, your most powerful loving moments were when you lost control. And yet we have to honestly admit how easily we get triggered and how much we don't want to be seen. So for example, if I just said to you, I want you to find somebody sitting close to you and look into their eyes, and we're going to do that for 5 minutes, just you two people. Who would honestly say we're not going to be a little bit terrified? Right? We're terrified. We don't want to be seen. It is a religion in the Western world. We do not want to be seen. I am a psychological spiritual leader, and I don't want to be seen all the time. It takes so little. Sometimes it's only a comment,
Duane, can we talk?
Can we talk? I don't say this to her when she asks me that question. But I think sometimes, well, didn't we talk last month? Talk? Why do you always want to talk? Can't you see I'm writing a lecture? What do you want to talk about? You're always wanting to talk. And I know you just want to point out something that I've done wrong, I'm sure. I know you're waiting for the day when you say, can we talk? And I'm just going to jump up and down and say, yes, I've been waiting for you to ask that question. I can't wait to talk. Let's sit down and talk some more. And I start strategizing when I sense that question is coming. Maybe I'll just get busy and she'll notice I'm too busy to ask the question. God, I wish you would just stop being so controlling. Maybe if I just go to the washroom, she'll forget by the time I come back that she asked the question. Right? Well, I'm not led by that voice, folks, very often, but I certainly hear it. That I still have to deal with where I came from as a kid in the East End of Vancouver in an alcoholic home where contact was dangerous. Doesn't mean it just instantly goes away just because you get to be a teacher at Claremont or write all the material. I'm not there yet. I'm working on it just like you. But it's really important to recognize how quick and how little it takes to trigger you to get back into your comfort zone. Correct? You know what I'm talking about. How many people have seen the movie Ordinary People? I'm going to show you a little clip of it because tonight I'm going to be telling you 3 steps to take to get to being the best that you can be. The first one is called stepping into outside of this comfort zone. The second one is staying in outside of the comfort zone and recognizing what you're feeling and experiencing. And the third step is to look around once you're outside of your comfort zone about what is this world. I'm going to tell you a lot more about that. But my first clip I want to show you is of someone that just was religiously committed to her comfort zone. It's Beth, the mother, in Ordinary People. Remember, for those that haven't seen it, I'll do a brief little synopsis of it. Beth and Calvin were parents. Conrad, who is really the center of the film, he's suffering. He's suicidal because a few years earlier, they had a boating accident, and Conrad's older brother, Buck, drowned while Conrad and Buck were boating together. An accident happened, and Buck ended up going down. And since then, Beth she was very, very close to Buck, and she could not stand feeling the grief and the loss. And she was really, really quick to formulate a plan of just getting back to normal. Her life became just an evangelical commitment to getting things back to normal. She loved golfing. They would go on their golfing holidays. They had nice meals. Everything was always tidy. And she was just completely committed to this. And so it comes to a point where the father, Calvin, he's in between Conrad and his mother, because the mother is really on Conrad's case just to stop being depressed. She can't stand to see her son being depressed, so she's kind of judging him all the time, wanting him to get back into his swimming classes. And Calvin, the father, is in between, and he finally cracks.
Calvin? Why are you crying? Can I get you something?
I don't.
What did you say? Calvin, what did you say? Tell me.
You are beautiful. And you are unpredictable. But you're so cautious. You're determined, Beth. But you know something? You're not strong. And I don't know if you're really giving. Tell me something. Do you love me? Do you really love me?
I feel the way I've always felt about you.
It would have been all right if there hadn't been any mess. But you can't handle mess. You need everything neat and easy. I don't know. Maybe you can't love anybody. There's so much Buck. When Buck died, it was as if you buried all your love with him, and I don't understand that. I just don't know. Maybe it wasn't even Buck. Maybe it was just you. Maybe finally it was the best of you that you buried. But whatever it was, I don't know who you are. I don't know what we've been playing at. So I was crying. Because I don't know if I love you anymore. And I don't know what I'm going to do without that.
The reason I said watch her closely, she had one moment where she was going to step out of her comfort zone and actually step in to what was waiting for her, to save her marriage, to actually feel the loss. You know, Calvin did not say, I do not love you. He said, I don't know if I do, and I don't know what to do about that. It was a question. He was not leaving her. He was reaching out to her. But she had to step in. Did you see? I mean, there's just that moment, the crack. Maybe the only moment of her entire life where she was actually going to have the opportunity to evolve herself personally and let her family go through of grieving together. Instead, her son had to then become almost suicidal as an expression of what was not being expressed in this family. It's very, very sad and a brilliant performance. So that's an example of what not to do. Right? And she thought she was doing her best. Doing her best. We're going to be strong. How often do you hear that when somebody dies? We're going to be strong. No! How about being human? Why do we have to be strong? Beth thought she was doing her best. Doing her best. And maybe she was. Maybe that's what we have to do to get through and to survive, is to do our best. But actually what was required there was for Beth to be at her best, which was to be all of what she was and going through, and lean to those that loved her to actually hold her in her loss and her grief. And that requires being vulnerable. She needed help. What's so bad about needing help? How many relationships stop at this point where we're not willing to be vulnerable? So these trigger points, and you all have your own. Something happens and fires off inside of you. This is where the action actually is. This is where the opportunity actually exists. And we in the Western world don't view it that way. It's the last place we think opportunity ought to exist, is in our womb. But it's a doorway to allowing loving action and connection to return. But this trigger can be anything again to propel us into this vulnerability. And so whenever I hear Catherine, for example, say, can we talk? You heard what my defensive mind wants to do with that. You know, I can hear it going off every time that happens. And like I said, I don't get run by that very much. Those voices don't come out like that, but they because it reminds me of, what do I have to step into? What's going on for me? Can I step into that place and stay in and allow myself then to have feeling? Because staying in, you're going to feel a whole lot. Staying in means allowing yourself to be truly honest and willing to feel what you have been avoiding. For Beth, who knows what it was beyond even the loss of her son and losses in her life? Whether it's potential loss, fear, and a willingness to expose memories to those fears. And you know what? It can also mean that we have a real fear of letting somebody know how important they are to us, of how much we love. That's equally as risky. So when somebody's important to us, we start thinking about all the other times somebody was important to us. What happened when somebody else was important to us, and the memories around that, and the power somebody has when they're important to us. You get married, you have children, you have a house, all of a sudden you're so wrapped up, they're really important to you. They have a whole lot of power, and we don't want them to know that. And so we hold back, we kind of hold hostage the total depth of our love for our partner. I can't tell you how many times in therapy and in workshops when we ask that question, do you love your partner? Yeah. How often do you say it? I don't know. I think I said that last month. And she knows that. Oh, she knows it. And that's good enough. So she knows it. You don't want to expose it. The other aspect of stepping in and staying into this other world, folks, it's not just about pain. It's also about being totally relational. To be able to champion someone else. To see somebody else's true other beyond the surface. And really speak for someone. And support someone. And let someone else know how bloody beautiful they are. And how important they are to you. How much you love them, and how much you adore certain aspects of what they're really letting them know. We're afraid of that. We had a couple in a workshop last weekend that had been married for close to 50 years. And their relationship was almost over because of an incident that happened when the wife was 21 and she had an affair. And he never got over it. And they came to this workshop to save their marriage because it was finally, after all this time coming up. And she really she said, I love you. And she was very proper, a little bit like Beth. Yes, I love you. I love you. Are we better now? And I stood beside her and I said, you know what I'm hearing inside of you? You know what I'm hearing inside of you? I am so happy we're here. I am so happy we're saving this relationship because I really, really love you. I feel so bad about what happened back then. I've been thinking about it every day for the last 50 years, and I want love in my life, and I love you, and I love you for being here. And I said, does that resonate? And she said, yeah, just like that. Well, why wouldn't you say that? Why not? It's because it's true. Why do we have such a hard time revealing our inner world? Not just our pain, but our love, our profound love for others. The next slide I'm going to show you is from Good Will Hunting. Most of us have seen that film, correct? Who hasn't seen Good Will Hunting? Everybody. They didn't want to put up their hand when I said that. But it's a story about this brilliant-minded kid that was a punk, and he grew up in a family where he was ritually, physically abused by his dad, who used to hit him with a wrench. And he went into therapy at MIT because they wanted to cultivate this great mind, but he needed therapy because he was so angry. Beautiful scene. We use this actually in our practitioner training program as a sample of what a therapist can actually do. And as Robin Williams, as the therapist, he steps in beyond just doing his best. He decided to be at his best. Again, when we're being at our best, folks, it's always going to be relational, not just positional. Relational. It's going to feel risky whenever we're being at our best because we're totally vulnerable. And he decides to take a step forward with this kid. They've been in therapy for quite a while. And most of it's kind of just been Matt Damon kind of, Will Hunting is his name in the film. Him kind of just doing a chuck and jive, dancing around, being cute, even and attacking Robin Williams sometimes. And so it came to a head.
What is that?
This is your file. I have to send it back to the judge for evaluation.
Oh. Hey, you're not going to fail me, are you? What's it say?
Want to read?
Why? Have you had any, experience with that?
20 years of counseling. Yeah, I've seen some pretty awful shit.
I mean, have you had any experience with that?
Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Sure ain't good.
My father was an alcoholic. Mean fucking drunk. He'd come home hammered, looking to wail on somebody. So I'd provoke him so he wouldn't go after my mother and little brother. Interesting nights were when he wore his rings.
He used to just put a wrench, a stick, and a belt on the table and just say choose.
Well, I gotta go with the belt there, Vanna.
I used to go with the wrench.
Why the wrench?
Because fuck him, that's why.
Your foster father.
Yeah. So, you know, what is it, like, Will has an attachment disorder? Is it all that stuff? Fear of abandonment? Is that why I broke up with Skylar?
I didn't know you had.
I did.
You want to talk about it?
No.
Hey, Will.
Stepping in.
I don't know a lot. You see this? All this shit. This is not your fault. Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
I know.
No, you don't. It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
All right.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me. It's not your fault.
Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean, not you.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Fuck them, okay?
I just love watching that scene. It taught me a lot as a therapist. It gave me permission to start realizing how relational therapy actually is. For Robin Williams, Sean here, to actually see the true other in Matt Damon. After Matt Damon lived a whole life of being told he's the scum of the earth, abused, ridiculed, humiliated by his foster dad, abandoned by his real dad, to hear someone speak to the truth about what he was a huge, huge risk. He stepped in, he stayed in, which was a risky thing to do, and felt tremendous for another. We are relational beings. We need that. We need that all the time. And that's not being codependent. That's part of our innate being. To the degree that we do not step in and stay in long enough to experience that, give that, experience that, exchange that, we will be crazy. We will be like all those politicians screaming and yelling at each other about who's to blame, what's wrong, who's wrong. But nobody is being vulnerable. Very rarely. Very, very rarely. It happens. Did you hear what he said at the end? He said, I'm sorry. You know, and I went back to the script just to look at the whole script because I didn't know how much they cut out. I found the script online. He was saying, I'm sorry to my foster dad. That there was something wrong with him, that he beat him. That it must have made sense. That was his, underneath it all, his ultimate suspicion of himself, is that he deserved it. Even though he had that militant, strategic self-cover of fuck you, underneath it all, he just really questioned about his own value profoundly.
Duane, can we talk? Duane, can we talk?
So instead of just defaulting back to my avoidant, distancing self that I learned how to do as a kid growing up in the East End of Vancouver, in an alcoholic home, that was my toolkit. You know, you're always going to be carrying that toolkit, doesn't mean you have to use it. Stepping in and staying in for me there is to tell her, you know, Catherine, every time you ask that question, I fear that I have done something wrong. And you were about to point it out. I have a long history that goes way, way back, that everything added up to that, you know, I came from a family that didn't quite belong in the community. That they were kind of defective. I felt guilty, not that I did something wrong, just that I am wrong. And at the moment I hear that question, Duane, can we talk? I hear it's going to be criticism, and if it's criticism, that means I'm going to be my dad, and I can't be my dad. So I energetically run and hide. The instant impulse is to avoid, because there obviously could be nothing good that can come from this. I got to stay in and allow myself to feel that. For me, this is being at my best. And again, do you remember my magic word before? What determines whether it's being at your best? What's the word? Relational. It's going to be legitimately relational, where you're going to start to have a three-dimensional relationship with somebody instead of a two-dimensional one where you reduce the other one down to some black and white caricature of themselves and have some half-baked approach to how you're going to survive together. Stepping in and staying, and you are going to feel, and you're going to feel a whole lot, and you will feel alive. Doing my best, instead of being my best there, would be, okay, I feel guilty, I don't want to talk about it. What do I have to do to make sure I don't get attacked and criticized here? I think I'll just fix things a whole lot. Make her coffee in the morning. Always sound like, you know, I'm looking out for you. But really, I have a defense. I don't want you to look at me. Maybe I could just stay busy, fix things, buy you gifts. But not actually letting her know me. A lot of us think we're doing our best. Doing our best is rarely relational. Being at your best always will be. So the first step is step in, the second one is stay in, the third one is look around. Meaning, it will come with discovery. Who am I here? If I step in and stay in long enough, it means staying in doesn't, for a lot of us, we think, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to say something, then I just want to jump back into my comfort zone. I'm going to dip my toes in and just come back to my control. No, step in, stay in long enough to look around and ask yourself, is this world I just entered into like Will? Like Beth could have had? Like I have when I finally speak? Is this world the world I feared it was going to be, that I am so religiously, militantly committed to protecting as a do not enter zone? Is it the same? No. Who am I here? Who am I here? Is this the one I thought I'd be here? Who's the other here? What is this world? How come all of a sudden everything's in color? What else is here? What else is possible? You don't know. You don't know. And that should be a good thing, that you should walk towards what you don't know rather than continuing to walk only towards what you do know over and over again and just experience your own version of Groundhog Day. Breathe it in. This is a new experience. Take a new picture. It's actually the world that you've been seeking all along because loving is innate in your nature. This is what you've wanted all along. It's the last place you thought you should ever look. You thought you were going to get this by being more controlling and more strategic. This is really what our awakening workshop is all about. About stepping in, staying in, and looking around long enough to actually experience the world that you want more than anything else that already is here. So, this keeps going for me around this. Now, this is something I don't normally talk about. As Olivia so boldly said, he's been in the helping profession for 40 years and more. More. How old is that character anyways? Right? I've been doing this a whole long time. Coming out of my family of origin, all I wanted to do was, I was motivated by there has to be another way. That's what Clear Mind's been all about. I've been really busy in the human potential movement, always looking for the antithesis of that experience I had at home, and I have not let go of it. With my the degree of passion I have for what I want to see have happen. But now we're talking about succession planning. We're a corporation, we got company, we got staff, we got assets, we got property, we got workshops, we got intellectual material, we got books. What are we going to do if Duane gets hit by a bus? I have been hit by a bus every day for the last year, apparently. But in that, it's been kind of scary. I thought it would be that people look forward to retirement. I'm not retiring, so don't get too excited. No bus drivers here, are there? I've just been surprised about how I fear that I could just be forgotten. And Catherine has been noticing me distancing, and she's been asking that question, Duane, can we talk? We had a staff meeting just last week. That's why I said I keep rewriting the lecture. And in our staff, we all check in. Even the leaders and the owners. And Catherine was checking in before me, and she just said, Duane, I want you to know that you're never going to be forgotten. And the whole room just went. And I had been going through this thing where I thought, well, maybe part of retirement or part of this whole thing is, is this kind of too entitled to have, I want to be remembered? Maybe my developmental task here is just to adjust to not being remembered. Like, that's just part of life, You're known, then you're not. And things just, there's just no guarantees of something like that. And I've been wrestling with it, and I'm kind of distant, and I felt kind of guilty to even mention it because I thought, am I being entitled here to actually talk about this? And again, this is from my family of origin, where I felt I'd ultimately now going to prove that I don't matter, that I don't belong, even if I created this whole company from scratch. that I don't belong in it. And so she brought this up, and she's teary-eyed. And she said, can we talk? Oh my gosh. And so I started talking, and I said, you know, a little while back, I said this to Steph and to Catherine, I said, this is the house that we used to live in before the house we purchased in 2010. We lived in this house when we were in Clearmine then, and we didn't have a whole lot of money, and we were leasing this place. It's not a great, executive home, as you can see, but it was actually a beautiful experience raising our daughter Erin there. And I drove up there. It's on this little island. For those that know North Vancouver, there's Capilano Road and the freeway, and then there's this little pocket of 6 houses that are between the freeway and the off-ramp. It's affectionately known as Bowser Island because it's just off Bowser Street. So there's these 6 little houses that are kind of hidden away in there, and we knew everybody in the other homes. It was a little community. And I drove up there a while back, and this is what was there, the same place. It looks pretty nice because there's a guy squatting there that's actually mowing and cleaning everything up. They cleared all 6 houses. There's nothing there. And I drove on there and I thought, oh my God. Shouldn't be allowed. That's where my life was. That's where all the stories are. That's where we lived. How come they don't have a plaque or something memorializing this? Like, this is crazy. There's this guy in a tent there, and I wanted to kick him off. But he had no idea. And I said I sat there and I cried because I just felt sad. Like, is that my life too? And so when I spoke about this, I was stepping in, staying in, and now I'm looking around and I'm noticing my staff, who I thought, they're good workers and they're just going to get on with things and it's not personal and there's other things to talk about other than Duane and his ongoing life dilemma about whether he belongs or not. But they turned to me and we're all teary-eyed, like we're just as this group of staff, like we were a family. And I'm looking around, oh my God. This is the family that I always wanted to have. They're working for me, but beneath all that, it is, what's the magic word again, folks, about being at your best? Relational. Profoundly relational. I felt like, what is this world? I don't just have to fade into the distance. I am known. I am cared for, and I am loved. And you know what Catherine suggested? She said, Duane, because I'm the only person in all our staff that's never done a Clearmine workshop. The prerequisite to work for us, you have to, including Catherine. Catherine said, because we have this process, what's called the human cradle. And she said, Duane, would you like to be cradled? And I said, yeah. And this is what happened. And I just felt like I could die now. But this is a group of people together that are stepping in, staying in, looking around at each other. So, whether it's Beth, who could step into her unresolved feelings of loss about her son, Buck, losing him, and letting her husband support her, or whether it's Sean the psychiatrist championing a part of Will that Will never even knew existed, whether it's Will stepping in to his own history and feelings about being physically abused, whether it's me confessing my fear of being forgotten and not belonging, whether it's Catherine taking the risk of asking to talk, whether it's my staff in tears and lifting their boss to the heavens. or whether it's a leader, a political leader, that's saying, I have a dream rather than I have a gun. I'm not just shooting for the stars here, folks. You may think, well, yeah, that's fine to say that. Like, well, how on earth is that going to happen? Well, I'm going to tell you it did. Anybody know who George Wallace was? Governor of Alabama, 1968 to 1982. He was a white supremacist, racist madman. He actually stood in front of a white university and prevented, with an armed guard behind him, black students from entering a white university. This guy was ultra, ultra, ultra racist. And in 1972, when he was actually running for the president of the United States, on the, strangely enough, the Democratic ticket, on primaries, he got shot. Somebody shot him. I think his name was Arthur Bremer. And he was paralyzed from the waist down. Now he's in a wheelchair. And he's still running. He's still governor. And actually, it forced him into a state of, forced him to step in. In his state of pain and agony, he started to appreciate all the abuse of his racist rhetoric, attitudes, and actions, and legitimately atoned for them by looking up those two black students that he initially, it was big headlines back then, those two black students, and apologized for what he had done to them. He then brought in black members into his cabinet. And in this final election in 1982, he also, by that time, had the majority of the black electorate voting for him. Can you believe that? So if he can do that, anybody can do that. So whether it's the, long before like these white radicalized young men, long before they became that, they were scared kids. A lot of what I'm hearing on the news today is all about, you know, do something, do something, do something, the chance of do something, do your best, do your best, do your best. Like let's do background checks. That's what we've got to do. That's true, you got to do that. Let's stop the bump stock. Yeah, you got to do that. Let's stop the military assault weapons from getting in the United States. Yes, you got to do that. That's what you got to do. But if it doesn't become relational, meaning seeing everybody involved, asking you to step in long enough, what on earth is going on with these guys? How did they get there? Well, you know, we got to recognize the signs early on when it's, got to red light it when they start doing stuff on social media that's obviously, yeah, we got to grab it then. All these doing our best are all at the end of the game. Treating the symptoms, not the cause. How about that we start thinking about these kids that come into the world? When they first start showing signs of being alienated, bullied on the school ground, showing grades dropping down, whatever it is, family, counselors, that we start relating to what's going on for this is the foundation of the building of a criminal mind if we don't attend to it. What do you think is going to happen to these kids that are separated, these refugee kids that are separated from their families when they're 1, 2 years old for a year? Tell me what's going to happen to them. Again, I'm thinking about relational. They don't have it. You're doing all this to stop terrorists or refugees from coming into the country. Guess what you're doing? You're fostering a terrorist mind. Are we insane? And again, this guy in El Paso drove 200 or 300 miles from Dallas to El Paso to shoot people in El Paso because that's where all the Hispanic people are coming over, right? And he thinks he's protecting something. Or he thinks, I'm going to feel like I'm going to be a hero with my community, even if I end up dying, but I'm a headline on a newspaper. I will feel like I am something. What is driving it? It's our need to be connected, but it becomes very demented. But the drive is still the same, and we have to embrace it that way. If we want to heal this, we have to be at our best and be willing to see the 3-dimension and even those characters, and even Donald Trump. God, I thought I'd never say that. Right? If he came to my office, I'd have to be willing to see the little kid in him that never had a chance. And B, the Robin Williams actually championing that part of him to emerge, and hopefully he could do something like George Wallace did. And if we did that, even with all the political climate that's going on, that maybe what they're protecting is their little sense of family and who they are from the people that don't look like them, colored skin. Maybe if they stepped in and stayed in long enough with us, stepping and staying in, we had a conversation, went to therapy. Maybe that looking around, the discovery would be, why? I have a much bigger family now. Which Donald Trump, you should take a look at El Paso, that's one big family there. Even with the Mexican town across the river, it's one big loving family of people redefining who they are as the face of America changes. And maybe also, folks, I hope you're reflecting on your own stepping and staying and looking around. If you look around long enough, you may notice how good it feels to extend a helping and loving hand to those in need instead of hurting them. How good it actually feels. Or whether it's you looking up from your comfort zone and asking yourself where you need to step in, stay in, and start looking around. I invite you to do that. Can we talk? Thank you.